States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Superintendent Buckley, can you verify the posting of notice of the meeting?
Yep, posting was done at the SAU office in the schools and was sent to all of the towns.
Thank you. Does anyone have any need to modify the SAU agenda, or can we go with what is currently stated? We are going to adjourn to a non-public session. Hearing no modification, we'll go with the approval as is. And I would entertain a motion shortly to go into non-public.
Sorry about that. I had to leave it on in case something goes wrong with my daughter. Hey, I'm in a meeting. Can I? Not for a couple hours. Okay, bye. It wasn't that.
Okay, I'll now call the roll. Bridgewater, yes. Bristol? Yes. Danbury?
Yes.
Groton?
Yep.
And Hebron?
Yes.
Okay.
Made a motion.
We then entered non-public at approximately 6:05 p.m.
Did you make a motion?
Oh, technically I did. Jeff made the motion and Ruby seconded it. It says right here in the form.
Thanks for telling me,
It
yeah.
must be.
We're going in under nine, third one down. Sorry about that. We'll adjourn at this point to room 106 and be back shortly.
Just a little roadblock. Like, have these, even my chair's full.
I'll have to do the name of it. I get some more, okay?
Okay, the roads that we go to, that's 6 and then 4.
Well, we could read it anyhow. Next question.
I stuck, yeah, I stuck 3 times in the middle because you're supposed to have to isolate. If I sat still, if I sat still.
Now what do you give me?
How many ways?
Just a lot of
But then when I came here at 6, I then I always go. But yeah.
The biggest reason was the way
I'm getting confused with analysis.
Well, he said that one time.
Okay, it is now 7:10,
I wondered if Glenn was in.
and we are going to return to our public session for the SAU board meeting, which brings us actually to item 5 on our agenda. For those of you here from the public this evening, I would ask that you sign in, printing your name and town, and return it to our clerk, Leah, with it for recording. If anyone wants to receive regular school board packets, please record your request on the other designated sheet, which is also there, and send it to scross@sau4.org. And you can get the full packet that we do digitally. At this point in time, we are now at public comment for the SAU board meeting. I see elected officials in attendance this evening. Is there public comment?
No.
Okay, anyone from the public that has anything they would like to say at this point on any topic? Hearing none, we will move on. And our faculty liaison is not here with us just yet, neither is our student liaison.
Vincent, they both asked if they could be dismissed for tonight because of the weather.
Okay.
Since I told our student rep that if he didn't feel it was safe to drive, that he should stay home.
Quite reasonable. That brings us to board minutes for approval. The meeting of August 12th was the last SAU board meeting. The only correction I believe I saw on there right in the beginning was that Danbury was excused from that, not absent. Get that, we have.
Yes, definitely.
Anyone else have any corrections? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Sue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? 6 yes. No one opposed. We do have 7 here this evening, right? 1 abstention, that's being Danbury. Okay, any correspondence and reports relative to the SAU board in our packet? We're not at the board meeting, we're at the SAU meeting. What's in our packet is superintendent evaluation data, which is what we were in public to discuss. Okay. Hearing no comment on correspondence and reports, we are now at our discussion items, which is a review of the SAU budget. Jason?
Yep, so I'm gonna pass around, take one copy and pass it around. This is actually the school district budget with what we did was pull out the SAU lines. And this kind of is gonna tie into C, which is the review of the RSA. So this is a budget that you actually have already approved because it's within the other budget. But we gave it to you anyway because it's the SAU budget. It is exactly as it was when you saw it last time.
What I wanted to do was just review these line items as we had done traditionally every year, and then after this, we would approve the budget as a whole. We did things a little differently this year, so I just wanted to give everybody the opportunity to scrutinize this carefully and understand what it's comprised of.
In general, the most lines in SAU are just level funded. I think the one place you'll see the largest increase was on the second page, which is where we added the curriculum director's position in the 2320 lines. Other than that, pretty much, we went on historical data, and basically level funded.
I'm okay with that term for this purpose, but I'd prefer that you say similarly funded to last year. Because when it comes to the school budget, when you educate fewer kids with the same dollars the following year, I don't consider that level funded. That's just me. Just a terminology thing, but anyway.
One question on that curriculum, that's 79.6?
So if you look at, so how it's broken out is, and Mike help me here if I'm correct, so we budgeted $80,000 for salary for that person, and then we obviously added health insurance, which is the next line increases.
Where's the benefit package up in the? where's
So
the-
benefit package would be the same, so if you look down, that third line, there's health insurance costs. And some of that might be changed just because we have 3 new SAU administrators, so health insurances may have changed.
So it really was similarly funded. It's not, because, for example, in this budget includes the 9.6% increase to health benefits. That's the primary increase on that side. The $80,000 is, because we don't know who we're hiring, that's inclusive of the whole benefit package. We didn't break that out with FICA and all that. That would be inclusive of it, the whole package. And we put that in as one adjustment to the wage line. And as we hire, that would be, it's really the target for what would go into the corresponding account. So we would adjust the Medicare and Social Security accounts accordingly when that person is hired.
Where does all your benefit package appear on this budget?
211 is the health insurance.
It's all separate.
So-
And that, and
The
the
object
benefit
codes.
package comes under health insurance?
Yes.
I was wondering why they would put that in, you know?
Well, it's interesting how the administrators, it's a compensation package, right? So they could use a certain dollar amount and it equals, it's actually kind of a complex. I think both Stacy and I, when we first looked at it, we needed 2 explanations from it and we had to go talk to at least 2 people. So it was inclusive of, it's manifested and budgeted for in the health line. It's not necessarily health insurance. So when I looked at the deductions that were pulled, some people take health insurance, so that's a portion of it. Some people have the remainder going to a tax sheltered annuity. And I'd actually recommend having a different object code for that going forward. But in the years prior, I try to keep it as similar as possible. All those went to that health insurance line. So for example, if I elected to have a tax $5,000 to go to a tax sheltered annuity, that is showing up as the district's portion is being funded out of the object code 211, which is technically health insurance. And as that compensation package, I believe, I can only assume why it was done that way, is based on the Comp 300 plan with an additional 5,000 added to it, and then it's a formula that it was all done in that health line. I would not recommend doing that in the future. I'm gonna try to give you some options later in the next budget cycle.
I ran this by Dan once, and I said, you know, how, we could end up in a bind with this someday down the road, with the taxes, and he said, well, it's up to the people to pay it. You know, I said, you know, that don't fly with Obamacare, and I don't think, up in the White House. I mean, I just, if you know, the salaries are salaries, and you get taxed on it, you know? It's healthcare, it's not, you know, it's put in this and this, and we don't withhold any taxes on it, we don't show the W-2, we don't look bad.
I think, but
But
you're
you're
just saying
required
this
to
is for
now.
budgeting
For
purposes.
budgeting purposes, it's
We're in
there, you
compliance.
see that
Okay,
number,
all right,
but
that's
if you're
what I'm
asking me
okay.
like how it gets taxed as a wage, it's completely different. So, let's say that if the money's going to a tax sheltered annuity, 403B, right, that is tax sheltered.
Yeah.
So, I would not pay income taxes on that as if it was income. If the money's going to our health insurance plan, again, tax sheltered. If we took a 40% payout though, which I think is one of the options, that would be considered a wage. And it would be added as probably a supplemental, I don't know if anyone's doing that. I don't think anyone is, but it would be added as a supplemental wage, just like with those employees that are taking premium waivers, they get a supplemental position paying out that premium waiver. So they're opting out of insurance for a certain dollar amount. And we would do the same thing in this situation.
So budget-wise, it's all in one place, but it's
Yeah.
being taken out in the different locations appropriately.
And the, still on the health insurance, that's, the 47,000 is a lot more than 10%, whatever, 9.6.
Yeah, and that's partly because some of those other items I included in the budget as all under health insurance. But that kind of compensation package would be less. So if someone were to change, it incorporates liability of everyone taking the same health package. So it's a philosophy of budgeting it.
So,
Yeah, it's pretty
estimate
close to
at
the
this point.
9.6%. It is an estimate, as is really the whole budget. So we know that, you know, in here, there's gonna be some plenty of imperfections, really, when we staff and work through this budget in real time.
And I have a question on board services, staff relations, negotiations. $20,000 budgeted. If we arrive at a 3-year contract, then that is money budgeted that we don't need to spend. Is that correct?
What line are you looking at?
It's
Page
on
what?
page 2,
Page 2.
and it's 2316,
I just see it.
staff relations, negotiations. I didn't know if there was some other use for it besides that. So the question is, does that mean we don't actually spend it?
Possible.
Wasn't
I mean, I know we don't know yet if we
17,000
need it. So yeah,
for the lawyer that we had last year,
right.
and we're not using one this year.
Yeah.
And you used, last year's actual expenditures on this was, you're right around 17,000. So are you, if we're completely positive that we're not gonna utilize the services of legal counsel through any negotiations in next year, then we could cut that line.
Oh, we don't know yet.
We
I
don't
just
know.
asked.
I don't know, and
Right,
a
right.
similar question came up in our budget committee meeting regarding our audit fees, which they're like, do you really need this, and our legal fee line. And we went back in history, and I think we've only budgeted the 20,000, so if you really look back in history, we've used 36,000, 24,000, and really it's an average, and it's a low-end average.
Okay.
So will we have funds left over in that line? It's very possible.
Yeah, I think leaving it in for now is the appropriate thing to do
Right.
for the reasons you cite.
Right,
Because
yeah.
if we come to agreement, that'll be a nice $20,000 bonus.
And anything we don't use in these
Right.
kinds of lines, too, we would give back to the taxpayer.
If we don't,
Right.
we might need assistance next year
Yep.
if we want to go back to the table next year. Yeah. Easy to see. The 30,000 in for legal services, Mike, that was historic?
It was similarly funded. Based on, and the last time this came up, I did a quick look at the cost over 7 years, which I can do right now. And when we looked at it, it was 21,000, 26,000, 24,000, 36,000, and that seemed to be on average par. And when the same question came up, the budget committee also did not reduce the line. When you look at it like that, again, it's more of a safety.
That
I
one
think
would-
that our philosophy on the use of legal counsel is very different from past administration, so I would agree that's probably somewhere where we could save.
Yeah, that's one you should asterisk.
Okay.
Because year to date, what have we spent?
300 and something dollars.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Attorney fee.
The telephone, that's budgeted considerably lower. Is there a reason for that?
From,
Oh, I'm on
Total.
page 3.
That's because we're adding curriculum
The
to it.
20, 531.
Yep, it's budgeted the same as it was
No,
this year.
that and health insurance.
And I'm guessing that was, yeah, so it's not, this year is the 3633, and next year is 3633. I'm guessing it was adjusted last year based on probably
We'll
actual
take the
usage.
legal.
Okay, yes, it was
30,000,
adjusted
and
last
then
year, and that's
$9,000.
because we made some changes.
Yep.
Plus the benefit package, it's $112,000.
One thing I'm gonna suggest, Mike,
Yeah.
when we used to do transcripts of minutes, for lack of a better way to put it, they were so voluminous, we had to do line items and line item numbers. But it made it real easy to go right to the line item. So when you give us documents like this, can you give us index numbers?
I could, these are system generated reports. I'll just give you some of my experience. I came from an area that was wrought with fraudulent activity. And one of the things that no one could ever accuse me of was producing doctored results. So I went to whatever accounting system you use for a general ledger. I went to those systems and they're all date stamped, and no matter where in time you look at this report, if you ever have to get called back on it, it will match exactly with the timestamp on it. And I mean, even to this day, I could show you board emails that I received this weekend asking for some of these reports, and where, you know, like saying that they're doctored. I'm like, have at it. On these, I would have to go in, I'd have to export that document in that format and hand input on every single line, those numbers.
I mean, export to Excel or just number?
I would have to, but it wouldn't be like, it doesn't export all the formulas, it leaves lines and bars, which can be done, and we could scribe in to each line those numbers. However, you notice the account number, that account number is very specific. So that, if you said in line item 10, 2310, 211.
Yeah, I know, we've been going through this for years, and it's just a convenience thing. If you can do it, please do it. If you can reformat reports. If not, I don't want you to have to export it.
It would be very time consuming. I mean, if it's really important to you.
Just
You
in
can-
general.
You can do it.
Just in general, it's just easier to communicate that way. Any further discussion on the SAU budget, Lloyd?
I'd like to make a little say on this, just a point of information here, more or less.
Now's the time.
Yeah, thank you. The tax bills went out. We got out of Bristol a few weeks ago. And I had some of the people come up to me and say, Lloyd, what happened? The tax went up. I said, it must be the community, it can't be the schools, because we cut a lot. And that, you know, I was wrong, but because I looked it up and what the amounts were, and I said, so I got the tax bill, and I looked it up. And in Bristol, the tax went up $1 per thousand, which was $200,000 home would be $200. And just that, not a lot, the local, just the school budget part. And I said, gee, I went back and looked at what we had. I might be wrong, as you can let me know, Mike. I had 2012 was 17,699,972, and 2013, 19,842,655. So we went up a couple $1 million.
Yeah.
That's where it was, right?
Yeah, it's really there's two reasons why I believe the tax bill went up, and it's possible I'm wrong. I know the assessment in general, the first 129,000 that we lost in adequacy aid for 2014, the budget's already approved. So that 120,000 went directly to local taxes. So your budget wasn't cut because that revenue line was lessened and went to the local assessment. So that was one reason. I believe that in years past, you gave a lot of funds the prior year back to the taxpayer. Is that true? In this next budget cycle, what happened? Yeah, you retained almost all of it.
It's only around 30,000.
Right. So
30,000 went back.
right, that's
Compared
it.
to maybe a couple 100,000.
Or 400,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 400,000 plus the 120, so that's $500,000. The way it's divvied out per pupil, I believe it's based on ADM. That's how that assessment came about. So our budget didn't increase, but the factors that this, what you couldn't control.
We're trying to do the best we can.
Yeah.
Right.
And we think we are, and people come up and say, what happened, you know? And I said,
So
well, it
next
must be,
year,
and I find out,
it would be a change, right? So you wouldn't have that
that's what I'm trying to
addition.
control this budget this year.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting at is, on this small budget for the SAU, we're adding this curriculum position, we've got 50 less kids, and we want to spend 100-something thousand.
61. 61.
I just roughly, I thought it's going down still.
Just want to be accurate.
All right, I thought it was around 50 the last I heard, so.
It is around 50.
So we got that many less kids, and now we want 100-something more $1,000 in administrative fees at the SAU with less kids. And that's not gonna sit too well with the public. It doesn't sit too-
I think it's the direction of funds, because in general, we're using funds differently. So the entire budget is looking, is in the ballpark, still not, still being, talked about in the budget committee. However, it's in that area of $500,000 below the tax cap. And right now, it's actually below the prior year's budget. Because it's, in this situation, the SAU budget, yes, did increase. But I think Stacy can speak very well towards the allocation of funds in a different direction to improving education.
I think that the overall goal is to do better things with the money we have. So the budget right now is about, not to be exact, but about $150,000 lower than the current year's budget. But what we're doing with that is better for students, it's better for instruction. And so that's been our focus. So while we're adding, it hasn't really added to the budget, because we just reallocated dollars. So while it's in addition at the SAU level, just because that's where we put the person, we want it to be a district level person, it's just a reallocation of other funds. So we've cut other things to be able to get there.
When you spend $120,000 more, whatever, you spend it, you don't have it. If you can give it back to the taxpayer, they appreciate, they don't understand when you say you added somebody up in the administrative office, you got another person up there.
Yeah.
Well,
And
you
I think
need
that's
to explain that.
That's all of our
That's what I'm
jobs is
saying.
to say that,
That's what the
right,
public
to
feels.
explain that.
And the mother says, my kid in the classroom, we got somebody up there, and you're cutting teachers here, they don't like that.
So let me ask, what is the most important thing we do in education?
Well, I'm trying to
What's the
get
number one thing we
this
should be here
education
for?
of kids. Now, I was speaking from what I hear from the old men and the old people, and which I've talked to people, the kids in the schools, the kids today, and I'll say it right out loud, do not get the basics. Grade 3, 4, and 5, reading, writing, arithmetic, and geography.
So we want to teach our kids, right?
Well, I
We
don't,
wanna
I
make
know, I'm
sure-
on the board here, and I've never seen it, and I
Yeah.
love to see it.
So we-
And
so our-
everybody else out there too. And I think if we push those 3 or 4 things to the kids, we'll come at top of the classes with all the other kids, when we get to 7, 8, 9, 10,
Yeah.
whatever it is, we'll be ahead. because we got the-
And we approved the coordinator
Right.
in the past, and I wonder if there's anything further you want to say about it.
Well, I'm not through yet, once I'm through, let me make sure I haven't got all.
Now's the time.
That's what you said, that's why I want to make sure I get it. Thank you, again. So I think that's a lot of money spent for something we could do without, really. Some $1,000 for a curriculum position. Are we gonna have to add another room up there at the administrative office?
That will fit them in.
Because I heard something about the
We're gonna add an addition
presentation, we
on,
wanted
no,
to
I'm adding
get
my
a new
mezzanine to
SAU
the
office, and I'm
back.
saying. And if she's gonna need her assistance in another year?
No. So Lloyd, if I can finish my thought is what is the most important thing we do is educate students. And we have nobody who oversees K to 12 curriculum instruction and assessment. It goes along with my job, which is near impossible to focus and to do that well. And that's what this role is for, is to help us to get to the point where we can ensure that every student is graduating, leaving second grade knowing their multiplication facts, so that we can assure that that's happened. We need somebody in charge of that. We need somebody talking to teachers, getting into classrooms, being able to do that.
And
Who's
we took
responsible?
action on it
Yeah.
already.
Whose responsibility was that in the past?
The superintendent's, it's my job.
So you got
And to
less work.
think I can do it both is
Can
not
I say
working.
something?
Ruby?
A few things. It wasn't really getting done, that's why we need somebody. So it might have been the superintendent's job, but it wasn't happening. Mike and Stacy have both talked about how there may be other places for them to save money, but they don't know yet. We've only been 3 months into the school year, so they can't tell yet where we have, in order for this budget to be created, they can't tell yet where else we can save, where else we may not need people. So this tax bill too is not based on the budget they're proposing. This tax bill that just came out is the second half of this last year.
Right, they're basing on last year's, is what
Yeah.
you're doing, yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that. But that wasn't too good, that went up $2 million. And I wasn't happy about that, and I don't think anybody else was.
Paul, did you have something to add?
Yeah, in defense of Lloyd, I've taken it a lot over the increase in taxes. And not just New Hampshire, Alexandria.
You mean recently?
Yeah, they got their tax bill, they're shocked, look at that sticker shock. My tax bill went up $800. Cost me a sale on my house. So, just a little caveat, if the teachers think they're gonna get a big raise, that ain't gonna fly, I'll tell you that right now, don't forget it. The taxpayers are gonna revolt.
Would it be helpful if we put together something for the board so that you had some, I don't want to call them talking points, but basically why that is, so that you had some information?
I
I
told
just
them
did,
why it is.
yeah.
I think the biggest part of it is, last year we had $1 million almost to give back, which reduced your taxes.
Yeah.
We don't have that this year. I said, and on top of that, you voted to authorize the school board to retain 2% of the balance, which they did.
Yeah.
So that's $350,000. So, but that's a one-time shot, they can't do that next year.
And you told them that we would not budget for contingencies the way we have in the past, because they saw fit to allow us to retain a fund balance for purposes of eliminating contingencies in several areas that would mount to what essentially became the fund balance at the end of the subsequent year. They had to pay it tax-wise, and they never got a check back saying that we didn't use it, but their taxes were reduced. And then in the year when that doesn't happen, the delta between what happens when the budget goes up and when they don't get that money to reduce the taxes is a bigger number, and their taxes jump. So that's in part an explanation.
That's
So
it, and I understand that, but when you tell them that we retain that, so we could eliminate that from the budget, and you're coming in with almost a matching budget, it didn't save a dime. did it?
Well, we don't know what the budget committee is gonna recommend. They're in the process of evaluating that, and there are a couple areas, there's been an update to that. We may eliminate another 30,000 in legal budget, so maybe 60,000. So there's gonna be a very careful look at things on an ongoing basis, and we don't know what those numbers are gonna be. We do have the opportunity for an exercise between the first deliberative session in February and election day, depending on what the people who show up at deliberative session decide to do. And that's the message. You gotta show up at deliberative session depending on how you feel about this, one side versus the other. That's where the action will be. Did you want to finish your comments, Lloyd, so we can
I'm all
move
set.
on? Okay, good. Does anyone else have anything further to say? The next item on the agenda is item 8B, which is to distribute the superintendent's evaluation form to the SAU board, which we have received in our packet, and so we're on record of having received that. Again, to remind everyone, I would like to have that submitted back to me by mid-January at the latest, so that I can calculate or tally your results in the manner in which that is done numerically. Okay. We're now at item 8C, which is the review of the RSA on a single school district. Stacy, would you like to jump in here at this
Sure.
point?
So when this kind of goes a little history, when I started here, I was totally confused about why we have an SAU board and a regular school board, because you really are the same entity. And so I did a little research, and so what I provided for you was the entire RSA, because the one little clause in the RSA doesn't make sense without the rest. But basically, if you look at the RSA 194C under school administrative units, on page 6 of 12, kind of in the center section is C3, and it basically says that single district school administrative units shall be considered the same as a single school district and shall be exempt from meeting the requirements of this chapter, except that they shall provide superintendent services pursuant to 194C4, which you do. So basically what that says is that as a single school district, you don't need to have a separate SAU board. Your school board functions in that role. So one of the things that I found was interesting, like this, the SAU budget. So the SAU budget is part of your budget. So that's the budget that you develop, that you bring to the budget committee. It's not a separate budget. When you're in a multi-district SAU, the SAU budget is a separate entity. It often has to have its own public hearing. It gets voted on by the members. In a single school district, it's very different. So I did a little research on what you can do, and basically you have a policy in your Newfound Area School District outlining your SAU board. If the board so desires, you can revoke that policy, which basically eliminates your SAU board. Your Newfound Area School Board acts as that role, so you really are one board. And I think it would be less confusing that one board manages everything, I mean, which is what you do.
Do you know what that policy number is?
I don't, but it's under admin, I can send it to you, but it's under, I think in the first section of school board.
Why don't we just put that on the minutes?
Yeah, so my suggestion would be, if the board
On our
is,
agenda, rather.
yeah, if the board is in favor of considering that, that we put it on our January policy committee to review. We can bring it to the February, either the January, February board for a first and second read to revoke it, which would be good time framing in the sense of it would be before your March election, so you can kind of eliminate that second board process before you get into, having new members and electing an SAU board or having to have an SAU board meeting. Because you are 7 people who function in the same role no matter which role you're in, and you don't have to have that board. So it seems like an extra process that you're doing that you don't need to have.
Just a comment. There is a mechanism for us to suspend a policy or alter it outright. And in doing so, we would need to specify for how long. So if we wanted to do that, that's a way to go about doing it. We could just specify that policy X, establishing an SAU board or whatever it says, could be suspended in perpetuity. That's an option. The other option is that, as you say, you can review it in policy, which I'm inclined to be in favor of, so that it gets discussed after being thought about a little bit, and maybe come back with a recommendation. The actual dispensing with the board, I think I'd be more inclined to want to think about this a little bit and then maybe take action in the future to do so, but not like right away. Because in order to do this, all the policies that read SAU board,
They all have to be changed.
they would all have to be changed, okay? So any motion to deal with this would have to include in it something along the lines of, and when there is reference to the SAU board in an existing policy, it shall then be dealt with by the Newfound Area School District School Board, or whatever. So I just want to point that out,
I think
that it's a logistical issue as well. And I want to think about this, because for 50 years, well, for as long as we've had SAU4, we've had an SAU board, and I think it would be something we should think about
Well,
carefully.
SAU 4 used to cover the entire western New Hampshire, multiple districts. So
Didn't know
it's
that.
probably just been there because of that.
Oh, you mean as a result of
Yeah, I
them
mean, it used to
spinning
go all the way to
off?
Plainfield. We used to all be in the same
Didn't
SAU.
realize that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then SAU4 was left with NASD.
Yeah.
Is there any value in separating out the SAU board decisions? Like we hired you, the SAU board hired you, not the school board.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think it makes it's the same 7 people sitting at the table. It's the
Yeah,
same
one of the
decision
things-
process. It doesn't take any power away from the
No.
NASD board. It gives you the same, it actually gives this board all the full authority of powers to oversee the entire district as opposed to separating it out.
Yeah, I would tell you administratively, I would like to see this happen just for that reason, because last year when we had our difficult year, we met weekly for a while. And one time it was the SAU board, next time it was the school board, some nights it was the SAU board and the school board. And all the minutes and administrative overhead that goes into that is a burden on the chair, I can tell you that. So I would be one in favor of it. But again, I want to do it slowly and cautiously. And I want to do it deliberately if we go forward with it. One thing I'll add is that Stacy did consult with Barrett Christina at the New Hampshire School Board Association and discuss the issue. And he concurs with her assessment that under the exemption in this RSA, we certainly could do that. Now, the other thing that might go along with that is maybe if there's space in any of the schools, we could move the SAU into one of the schools. I don't know. That would be an advantage.
We've been doing a size assessment. We think we need about at least 6 classrooms. We have a lot of stuff. You'd be surprised what the basement looks like.
Any further discussion? Other opinion? I think I'd like to turn to policy and ask that you consider it and maybe come back with a recommendation on the impact on policies, because that's the first thing that I thought.
Absolutely, we have a meeting scheduled for January, we could put that on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Stacy, any other points on this? Okay. Thank you. An innovative idea. We're now at other business. Does anyone have other business for the SAU board? Hearing none, we're now at item 9, public comment on the agenda items only. Does anyone have anything to say from the public? Hearing none. We now move on to action items. The review of the SAU budget. Does anyone have any action they would like to take? I don't believe any action is necessary. Is everyone in agreement? We'll move on to item 10B. Distribution of the evaluations of the superintendent's been done, so no further action is necessary there. Item 10C, review of the RSA 194, which allows us to make ourselves a single school district without an SAU board. Perhaps for the record, it would be appropriate to make a motion to refer this to the policy committee for its January meeting.
I don't know that we need a motion. Can any of us bring something to policy that we want to discuss?
Well, you can, but this is a significant issue if we disband it just in terms of structure. So I just was thinking in terms of the record.
I think for documentation as to if somebody would look back and say, how did this happen?
Yeah.
That you have a record that the board made a motion to
That's
look at
really
it.
what I'm thinking of, so.
All right, and I move that we refer this to the policy committee.
Okay, Ruby's motion is action to disband SAU board to refer to policy committee for further review and recommendation. Is that your motion?
Yep.
Thank you.
Probably ought to be someone other than the voting member of the policy committee to second that.
I'll second it. Okay, the motion made by Ruby reads as follows. Take action to disband SAU board be referred to policy committee for further study and a recommendation to the school board. Motion's been seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the vote is 7-0-0. And this is 10C. Okay. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the SAU board. Moved by Sue, is there a second? Seconded by Paul. It is now 7:53. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.